Hello, welcome to the Assured Trust guest series powered by Genix Cyber. This series brings together thought leaders and experts from across the cybersecurity landscape to share insights, discuss trends, and explore practical strategies that help organizations stay ahead of evolving threats. Each episode is designed to connect professionals, spark conversations, and provide some actionable takeaways that can be applied in real-world cybersecurity challenges. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of hacker psychology, understanding the mindset of attackers, what drives them, and how organizations can anticipate and defend against their tactics. I'm thrilled to have two exceptional speakers with us. First, let's hear from Valentina Flores from Red Sentry. Valentina, could you please introduce yourself and share a little bit about your work?
Yeah, Don, thanks for having me. So what my company does is called ethical hacking. So we hack into companies before the bad guys do to show where vulnerabilities are. But my background's a little bit different than most. I don't come from a tech background. I come from a criminal psychology background. So I was a detective for years and got thrown into internet crimes and was somehow expected to chase after these advanced cyber criminals, and just kind of fell in love with the chase of it and the game of it and how just that whole hacker psychology. So when my partner and I founded Red Sentry, that's really what we wanted to be crucial to everything is how are hackers actually operating right now? What are they doing? What's the psychology behind it? Because often that's just as important as the technology, and it's very undervalued in a lot of cybersecurity firms.
Well, great, great. Thank you. Thank you for that intro. Very interesting background coming from criminal. So, and now from Genix Cyber, we have Gautam Dev, founder and CEO. Gautam, could you please introduce yourself?
All right. Thanks, Don. And thanks, Val. It was a great pleasure to have you on this forum. For everyone, this is Gautam Dev. You would have seen me as the regular host for the Assured Trust series that we come out from time to time. And this is a special episode with Val joining us as the guest speaker. I started with cyber something around somewhere around 95, and have seen the growth of both the bad side of the industry or the bad side of what's wrong with the hackers and the hacking techniques and how they've grew over time, as well as the whole good side of the industry, the good guys and girls, such as what we strive to be every day, and with Genix Cyber as well as our platform Argus. That has been something that I've been working on for the past 13, 14 years and finally brought it to fruition. But today, it's a real exciting topic as far as discussing about the whole hacker psychology, how that relates to the technicalities of a breach, and so on and so forth. So excited to be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, both of you, for those great introductions, which I think should be excellent for this podcast, right? So let's start with a foundational question. What really drives a hacker? Is it profit, curiosity, or the thrill of the challenge? And maybe, Val, maybe you could take that one to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the problem is everyone just thinks of money, and there's so many more motivations than that. I mean, obviously, they want money, but hackers also really love competition. They love getting into where others can't. There's people that hack for political views. We call them hacktivists. There's whistleblowers like the Ashley Madison leak years back. And so there's so many different reasons for that. And understanding the motive is really important, because when you know what they're trying to get, that often kind of influences the techniques they're going to use, what they're trying to get to, how to stop them. So the motivation is, it could be anything, and it's really important to understand what that is before you're trying to stop them or prevent them.
Well, those are very excellent points, Valentina. Gautam, building on Val's point about motivation, how do we translate that understanding into practical defense measures?
Yeah. Look, everything that a hacker does is driven by motivation, and it's always is not just financial. As Val very rightly pointed out, there are hacktivists who, as well as some who do just for the fun and the thrill of it all, where they want to wreck someone's brand reputation and put it out in the social media or however, or simply give the governments a run for their money, right? And then there's state-sponsored bad actors as well that would wait patiently in some sort of a stealthish mode and kind of lay the groundwork for doing a bigger for a silent breach, if you would, over time, right? It's the new age of spying, if you but that's the motivation of it. So all the techniques, the practicality of a hack are driven by that motivation, right? So not every groups like MITRE and others have come out with all these hacking techniques, but a technique is there to put a hacker's motivation into action, and that's what is important. And there's the behavioral context, which gives you the intent of the hacker. If you were to, it was first check, is it a mistake or is it truly someone trying to be a miscreant? And so on and so forth. And then the techniques will fall into place to say, okay, this individual is trying to lay the groundwork for such kind of an attack, and you can stop them in the tracks. But overall, I think intent and motivation are the pivot around any breach, if you will, from that point of view, that then culminates into different techniques.
Yeah, and if I can, I think the big problem we have in this industry is so many companies and organizations still think they're not a target. And the reason they think they're not a target is because they're only looking at that financial motivation. They're saying, well, we don't have 50 million in our bank account, so therefore we're not a target. But there's so many different layers to that. And so I think breaking that motivation myth is really important for educating businesses why they all need to be, improving their security posture.
And in today's world, digital world, data is the biggest currency, literally. So if you have, I mean, if nonprofits, for example, how much of data and personal information would they have to perform whatever service they do to people around the globe? That is in itself a huge tank of digital currency, if you would. Um, and and then you're absolutely right, Val, in those terms. Yeah.
Great conversation. You both of you bring up some great points. So let's go to another related question. So, do you consider the hacker's intent to be more valuable than their technique while building a solution? Val, maybe you could
Um,
take that. So,
yeah, I wouldn't say more valuable. I think obviously the technique is, the crux of what they're doing, but they impact each other a lot. And I think in cybersecurity, we tend to only talk about the technique. So I do think intent is undervalued, but they impact each other a lot. And techniques evolve constantly. Techniques are changing every minute of the day, but intent tends to stay a little bit more predictable. And if we know why they're trying to get in, whether it's data or disruption or the nation states, like Gautam mentioned, if we know why they're trying to get in, we can anticipate moves better and better defend. It's just like playing chess. When you're playing defense, you have to anticipate the opponent's strategy and not just react to individual moves. So it's about figuring out that whole strategy so that you can anticipate and better defend proactively.
Wow, that's quite an interesting viewpoint. Gotham, how do you view the balance between intent and technique when designing defensive systems?
Look, if you can literally catch an individual when they access any system through their intent, that is the true measure of proactive defense in it. Uh, Techniques are still tactical, right? Because they are obviously documented. And then when you run into 0 days and stuff, attacks which are not already documented until they become a reality, who's causing that reality to take shape and why, right? So I think techniques are an offshoot of hackers' motivation, hackers' intent of what they're going to do, why they're going to do it, and how they're going to do it. And that's the relation that I believe our industry still struggles with, because the closest thing to an intent is the user behavior analysis or analytics, if you would, that we perform or detect any vulnerable characteristics. Now, how can we further explore those characteristics to be a combination of those characteristics to define, okay, this looks like the motivation, right? And have a separate stack of intent which is a sum total of different characteristics of a breach, and then tie the techniques over to it. So I think the true proactive measure of a breach or stopping a breach is, if we could lay a finger on that behavioral context that relates to a hacker's motivation or intent. Yeah.
And also, I mean, you can look even from a non-technical perspective. If you have a Google alert set up, say you have a school district and you have a alert set up every time a school district gets hacked, it pings you. You don't have to really know much about hacking to know that, hey, 10 school districts across the country just got attacked and all the data was leaked.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a school district, you should probably pay attention to that. And so it's just kind of opening up your eyes and really just looking objectively at what's happening around. And I think that helps a lot too, regardless of the specific intent, but just what's happening in the real world.
Well, great discussion, and again, two different viewpoints. So let's shift to the psychology and the next question behind the first breach. That initial foothold gives attackers momentum. How do defenders intercept before it snowballs? Val, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the initial foothold is everything. A lot of time spent in a attack is just that first entry point. From there, it's usually pretty easy because businesses spend a lot of time, kind of the perimeter and then not really working a lot on what's inside the perimeter. So one set of passwords can just give the keys to the castle. So yeah, the momentum happens fast from there. And it's a lot about companies just trusting what those outer defenses are. And like I said, I was a police officer, so I'll give you an analogy. It's a lot easier to keep the front door locked than it is to drag out a burglar who's barricaded himself inside the house. So once they get in, they have so much access so quickly. It just happens so fast. So stopping that initial foothold is extremely important, but also acknowledging that sometimes they are going to get in. So making sure you prevent what they can have access to once they get in. So assume the breach, they're going to get in. now what can they touch? Can they get to admin privileges? Can they get to these files? So I think both sides of that are really important.
Well, now we could all imagine that how a nightmare that is, and referring to your analogies and your experience as a police officer kind of really brings it to the forefront. So, Gotham, from a detection standpoint, what signals indicate a first breach is underway?
Look, the first breach, there are two kinds of first breach, really, right? I mean, one is the first breach of an organization, which is, I believe, what we're talking about here. The second is primarily is which I think is important to note when we are talking about hacker psychology and motivation is what motivates a strong cybersecurity individual to become a hacker, right? And have that first breach as that hacker, right? Because there are two parts to every individual who is learned in cybersecurity to either become a bad guy or a good guy, right? What motivates them to go the other way as opposed to the right way? So that I mean that in itself, and that would be their first breach, right? Once they have made up their mind. But again, coming back to the point of the organization and the first breach, I mean, everyone knows, right? I mean, it's not a hidden fact that phishing and elements of social engineering or human curiosity is or in some ways stupidity, right? And if you got your passwords and everything else, sticky notes all over the place, so it's kind of a way to exploit that human psychology through all those means, right? Because that's the gateway into any organization. Uh, Companies have done a lot to educate individuals against how to protect themselves around phishing, be it via emails or phone calls or what have you, right? But it still misses a whole lot of times, right? And otherwise, these companies wouldn't be getting breached by the day. So I think that's very important, and they need a foothold, right? So I mean, the first breach could be just a silent foothold within the organization, and then they spiral off of it, sit quietly, get the measure of the network. Where are the crown jewels? How can we get to them? And so on and so forth. And that is where, kind of regular scannings, regular good sanitary hygiene of your IT infrastructure and monitoring of it would do us good. But at the first level, every one of us, each one of us has to grow a little bit more intelligent to understand what is fake email or a fake phone call, and with AI they become so easy, and the magnitude of all of that has increased tremendously. So yeah, I guess that much intelligence in all of us would go a long way.
Gotham, I think that's a really good point about the silent foothold, because so many people think that if they haven't seen the word ransomware flash on their screen in big red letters, then they've never been hacked.
Yeah.
And that can't be farther from, like, so many companies have been attacked and data stolen and they never have an idea about it. So I think that's a really good call out.
Yep.
Wow, Gotham, some really great points, right, from both of you again. So now here's a question that really would resonate with many, right? Why do simple techniques like social engineering and phishing continue to succeed, even with all the modern defenses out there?
Because technology changes so much faster than human behavior. I mean, and it may be simple from a technology standpoint, but it's extremely sophisticated from a human nature standpoint. People that are good at fishing, vishing, all these things. I mean, they understand humans and they know how to play that. Humans are wired to trust. And just as we start to not trust one thing, like we finally, stop wiring money to some prince, then a new thing comes along and it's like we have to learn all over again. And then now the voice calls, everything went digital to emails, and now phones are coming back in the mix, and a lot of social engineering is happening over the phone because now everyone's wired to assume spam in an email, but they're never thinking about spam, on a phone call, or that phishing attempt on the phone call. So it's just technology changes and human nature doesn't. And it's just about continuous training. And, for us, when we do tests around phishing or vishing, it's not about shaming people for clicking links. Every one of us has clicked a link before, like a lot of links, I'm sure. You probably click the link and then like exit it out real quick because you're like, oh wait, did I click that? It's just about that awareness and understanding, how it works, what the hacker can do with it. So we like to use a lot of stories and, hey, listen, when you clicked on this, it may have seemed simple, you exited out. This is what can happen with it. This is what's next. And really, it's just, that education piece.
That's quite a strong point, Val. Very strong. Building on this, Gautam, how can defenders detect socially engineered access before it escalates?
It's very similar to how do you check for brand reputation or misrepresentation online, right? There's a lot of applications that do that today. So for each one of your employees now, uh, it's a very thin line in doing something that is ethical and not ethical, right? Because you are bound by laws to not go digging into your employees' personal lives as well, because you're on the good side. So you have your hands kind of tied to understand a social engineered, how many of your employees have been socially engineered. But in the same sense, I mean, some baseline commonsensical procedures could give you an understanding, right? I mean, if something is already on the dark web, right, then monitoring the dark web for any of your organizational or employee information is very relevant to understanding, because whatever be the engineering mechanism, social or otherwise, it's there. It's just waiting to be engineered to get the credentials out of the individual, right? Through phishing or spamming or what have you. Now, so that becomes essential. So, and how you kind of study that data and reflect that data or even govern that data. Most of this is human, again, psychology or the measure of patience of an individual, right? I mean, if you see today, governance or approval email, the number of approval emails or texts you get, right? Imagine that if that is multiplied by 100 times, right? Are you not going to go nuts? At some point, you're going to you're going to by mistake click something that you are not supposed to click and even not recognize it, right? So that's the hackers again. Wait for that kind of lack of impatience, or that sudden impatient kind of feat of any user, and you're in, right? So because you've got your access approved for something you shouldn't have, right? You've got the OTP for something that you shouldn't have, right? So and there's a lot of examples of breach similar to that, right? Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's just about again building that behavioral persona or context of a behavioral persona to understand an action being committed, the intent behind the action being committed, or if it's an anomalous intent, or if it is a mistake, or what have you, and then get and the recognition of that fact becomes really important. So I think the gap is closing between intent and techniques. If you really use the behavioral context in a more explorative sort of way, you should. I mean, yeah, and with AI. But again, look, I wrote a paper about 5 years ago, right, before all of this started, where I mentioned, look, we would come up with AI schemes to protect. The hackers will have the same schemes available. What they also have access to that we don't as a single organization is billions and billions of data elements lying in the dark web, right? To test out their theories on. So we got to be wary of that. So that's why scanning and doing the right thing by the dark web, you're not doing anything wrong because you're trying to protect yourself and the community around you, is a good proactive measure, right?
Well, Gotham, some great points, and it seems like you could talk forever on this stuff, both of you. So it's great conversation. We have another question. Here's another question where what might a hacker's mindset be when designing a convincing social engineering or phishing attack?
I mean, salespeople hate when I say this, but they're just good salespeople. The exact same way, as Gotham was talking, like the buyer persona, like the using AI to scale and find lead lists, like it's almost the exact same. You're looking at social media posts, you're looking at how will this person respond, what type of person are they. So it's very, very similar to how we approach sales. A big thing that Gotham mentioned was like the impatience. They use urgency tactics for everything, and I have zero patience. I have ADHD, and I had to create processes where I have a system where I'm not allowed to click on something until like a waiting period. Like I had to create these processes for myself so that urgency tactics didn't work on me. And so I think they use all these different psychology things. And one thing I think we miss a lot in the industry is whenever companies want testing done in general, they're either testing their tech or they're testing the people. They're either doing phishing tests or they're doing web application tests. And very rarely do they test all those things together. And that's why phishing is so successful is yes, it's based in technology frequently, but it's got these human components. So, I hope, and I think we're starting to see more companies taking that holistic approach, red teaming, all of these kind of larger assessments that are more open-ended. And I think that's a much better way to go and just see how a hacker would really come in, what they would do next. So I think the combination of that creativity, psychology, and tech is what makes a hacker so successful, and using those same things are what make defenders successful.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
Excellent, Val. Gotham, how do these tactics inform proactive defense measures?
Yeah, I just want to ask a simple question. How many, say, people's Facebook profiles do you think on an average have fake friends, right? I mean, at one time we did this test a long time ago. Find a university, any university, right? Find students in the university having Facebook profiles, right? Create a fake Facebook profile of you being in a particular year, blah blah blah, pass out alumni of that university, make it look all genuine, and for the same year, go ahead and send a friend request to someone on Facebook and you would at least get 10 to 15% success rate. Now, once you're in on someone's Facebook profile, you just sit and gather information, right? I mean, as far as, and I bet, some way or shape or form, you would have answered some security challenge questions for them, blah, 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 and have the requisite information to breach their credentials, wherever it be. So, as a proactive defense measure, right? All of us as individuals, again, I want to go back to saying that what I answered towards the last question, have to be very careful of what we accept, right? Even in our personal life, right? I mean, a Facebook account, very personal to each other. I, for example, only use Facebook for real close family and friends, and everything else, I mean, you could have another profile where, because I mean, LinkedIn is for work, Facebook is for family, right? And friends. I mean, I'm not saying that everyone needs to follow that example, but all I'm asking is be careful in what you accept and who you accept, as far as a follower or a friend or anyone, because oftentimes, how many people recognize from the high school who they actually went to school with, except for a handful of people, right?
Hmm.
Now I can give you, I can spoof you and saying I was one of them by giving you examples of things that happened in the school, which is very easily to find out in that particular year what happened and blah blah blah. And so be very careful who you accept, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and if I can give kind of a creative example for both an individual and a business. In Facebook, one of the bigger things we're seeing is hackers know that you're scared of hackers. So they'll create that second profile and then they'll say, hey, my first one got hacked. Definitely don't do that one, report it. And so then the original true profile gets reported as an attacker over and over again. And
Mm-hmm.
they basically just taken that whole identity because they're playing on your fear of hackers. And then something that we've seen in the business side similarly is, and we've used this too in phishing tests, like we'll make a very obvious email that looks very obviously like an attack. It'll have like different fonts and colors and it
Mm-hmm.
looks so suspicious, and it's like, pay me $1 million invoice. And then at the top we'll put a little link that says report this as spam. And so then
Mm-hmm.
everyone clicks it and they're like, I got
Yeah.
it today. I did
Yeah.
it. I'm going to press spam. I recognized it. And that's obviously the malicious link. And so there's so many creative ways. And that's
Yeah.
where technology can kind of come in and help sort through some of those. Google does a great job knowing when something's spam nowadays, Microsoft. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat. They're creative.
Yeah, remember, I mean, I get a giggle out of these text messages from whoever CEO or boss saying, "Hey, I'm in a meeting. I need you to transfer so much money through a gift card." And how many people have actually fallen for it, right? That is amazing. I mean, again, it's that sense of urgency that I need to do this and this and this time, and you can call this number to validate or what have you. And my God, it's just unbelievable. And there are so many variations of those kind of emails, and um, it's it's so sad that it's funny, right?
Yeah.
So let's not be the example, but be the example to stop a breach from taking place, right? But Yeah, absolutely right. I love that spam one that you mentioned. I mean that's a new. Yeah, everyone would fall, kind for that, literally.
I
So
I
yeah.
know I have. So
Yeah.
in the past.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little about thinking like an adversary. Attackers are creative and defenders need to be predictive. Val, how does red teaming help organizations anticipate these types of threats?
Yeah, I mean, you can't ever test your own system unbiasedly. We're a pen testing firm and we don't pen test ourselves. So, that red team is really that realistic third party, unbiased view that thinks like a hacker. And that's the only way to test your defenses. We saw recently there was a company where all of their data was so buttoned up. We couldn't get in. It was like really good. We were like, oh man, we're not going to find anything. They were totally buttoned up. And then their conference room camera was admin. So we were able to get into their conference room camera, which had all their calls. And it was just, they had never thought about that piece of equipment because they work mostly remote and they were just thinking about the tech stack. So there's things that you can't think of, as a defender and being within your organization. So that adversary part is really important. And the more you have that, the less surprised you are. I think everyone should do it within their own teams too. You should do tabletop exercises. It's free. Set an hour with your team, your leadership team, whomever, sit around a table, download a template off Google for free, and just say, hey, if we were hacked tomorrow, what would we do right now? Like if this happened, what would we do? That's something totally free that everyone should do in Q4 coming up. That just makes a huge difference in your posture. Just start thinking like that adversary.
Mhm. Yeah.
Great advice, Val. So, Gotham, how in that vein, how do adversary behavior paths translate into actionable defense strategies?
I think I've spoken enough about the behavioral context and the persona, what we need to do. But look, we can't put boundaries around behavior too, right? We can't just say that these are the types of anomalous behaviors that I need to look for. Yeah, you're blindsiding yourself. What does zero trust say, right? Say trust no one, right? So, in the same vein, you need to be able to say trust no behavior, right? And validate if the behavior is coming from the right individual at the right time, the right place, whatever the elements of that particular action might be, or the meta data associated with that action might be that you need to check because the behavioral context and the staging of it might change, right, from time to time. What is step one today could be step three, right, and vice versa. So we can't really put, I mean, I'm not saying don't have a repository of anomalous behaviors. You certainly do start there, but don't then think that any other action is foolproof, right? If it is not part of that repository, you need to look at everything with suspicion as far as access and behavior goes, because you can't create the exact DNA of a hacker, right? From one to another and say, okay, these are the DNA elements, and I mean, if this fits into this, then this is a hacker or not. I mean, I wish we could even get to that point, right? But I think for till then, we need to treat everything with suspicion, every action with suspicion, and be able to validate it, right?
Well, even my own team, like zero trust, I assume that my team is going to accidentally trust everyone. And like, I hate when now organizations are saying like, oh, there's a policy, no one's allowed to use ChatGPT. And it's like, well, your people are using ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
So let's be realistic about that. Let's not be naive. And let's work in reality and not in these like idealistic scenarios. So like you said, just be suspicious, assume people are already in there right now. They have that silent foothold. What are you going to do next? You have to have that mindset.
Great. So here's our last question for the both of you. So would it be possible to create standardized templates that outline hacker intent which could then be reverse engineered to build stronger defenses? Val, what's your thoughts on that?
Um, yeah, I mean, hacker techniques are already pretty mapped out, like Gotham was referencing earlier. The problem is there's thousands of combinations and permutations of that. And the techniques just change so frequently. So the mapping out is important, but it only does like one small piece of the job. You can't just use that to instantly defend everything, which I think is kind of a message I've been hearing lately with AI is like, well, we have the miter, we have all the different permutations, so let's just like
Yeah.
defend, and it's not that simple. Um, but I do think in defense mapping, intent is underutilized. Like we should be taking those maps and adding intent to it to kind of figure out, the most natural next steps. Just like hackers use victim mentality or victim psychology every single day, we also need to be using hacker psychology to defend. So it goes both ways. Psychology is definitely being used by them to get into our systems. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to use it as well to defend against it.
A
Well,
very good point.
that
Well,
makes a
I
lot
think
of sense.
that is really well put. Yeah. Uh,
So Gotham, how would these templates work in practice?
I, I would say we already have these templates. I mean, what is NIST, right? What the best practices? What are the regulatory controls in some shape or form, right? They give us a map or a template to say, okay, all this is good, all this is bad, right? But it's not just that, right? I mean, you could do all of that, but how would you differentiate a hacker from an actual user, right? And what exactly are they going to do next, right? I mean, how do you even get that level of proactiveness, which is uh, uh, again, which you can't do without just whatever Val said, right? That if hackers are using our user psychology to breach them, we need to say, okay, this is how the hacker will think, that they need to look at us and what is a human trait to breach them and then map that to a technique, right? But what can we do for to kind of reverse all of that and say, okay, let's just sandbag them, right? I mean, in old days that used to be a way, right? Honeypots or what have you, where you know that someone's come in unauthorized, and you just basically trap them. So that was one way of doing it, and we just I mean, the point is, with our industry technology, right? Everyone wants to do something new, but they forget their original DNA of why they formed the company to begin with, right? And that forgotten DNA would be the crux of everything else. If you did that right, maybe and grew innovate, innovatively around that concept rather than buying ABC and trying to just sell more and more and more. I think that what we at Genix truly try to do is you need to look at the whole universe of everyone using internet as a community and how you could help that community by doing something right, and how you could spread awareness and the right kind of advice rather than pushing something down their throat. Okay, now you bought this, now we've got this too, right?
That could be a whole
So
other podcast, Gotham. We should do
yeah,
that one next because that's
exactly,
that.
yeah. But that's what is lacking, right?
Yeah.
So I guess go back to the originality and start with thinking again in terms of behavior, the behavioral context, the persona, and variations of that, right? So do the right thing. Every one of us need to become that little bit intelligent to not click on that link, not read, read a useless text and dish out thousands of dollars in an Apple gift card, right? Or anything like that. So that becomes important.
Thanks, Gotham. I guess maybe some of this may have been covered before, but let's have a final thought. So understanding the adversary's mindset isn't just useful; it's quite essential. When red teaming insights and threat intelligence come together, they help shift security from reactive defense to proactive resilience. So, Val, do you have a final thought on that?
Yeah, my favorite analogy in cybersecurity is you don't have to outrun the bear, you have to outrun the person next to you. Every little step you take in security makes you less appealing to the hacker. So I think a lot of times people don't jump into security because it's so overwhelming and there's all these tools that Gotham mentioned and they don't know where to start because there's so much. But security is not a finish line, it's
Mm-hmm.
a continuous journey. And so just pick out one thing this quarter that you're going to do. Maybe it's the tabletop, maybe it's something else, your passwords. Just pick out one thing and just start building it as part of your habit. And that's going to make such a big difference when that hacker is looking for that easy way in. He's going to move on to the next guy when, that doesn't work. So small little things make a big difference.
Thanks, Val. Makes a lot of sense. Good points. Gotham, you have a final thought?
Yeah, I would go back to what Val said as a response to the last question, right? Is about the psychology of the hacker knowing that, right? Because they're doing the same to us, right? Let's tire them out, right? Let's say, okay, you want to see this kind of an individual, that kind of an individual do this. Let's have, I mean, we got agents now doing all sorts of work, right? Create all these fake agents as your pawns, lining up your firewall, maybe. Who knows, right? And create a sandbag kind of an, kind of atmosphere for them, so they give up trying. But truly, it's about us thinking like the attacker, and that's nothing else but understanding their psychology, right? And by modeling their intent, and learning from it, right? And how that map then goes ahead and maps to whatever technique you use. Techniques are secondary, literally, right? I mean, there are ways, and those are the tools in your toolbox, right? But what tool you need when and why, and what is it that you're building becomes very important, right? And that you could only know if I understand what Dawn likes, right? And if Dawn's trying to build something, right? So yeah, I mean they train on our psychology, so let's do the reverse and build a model of trust and a model of a trapping, a mousetrap, right? So yeah.
So, so great points by both of you. So I believe we are done. We answered our 7 questions. And I think you guys did a fantastic job with all the points. Thank you very much.